Yes, the Honourable for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, we are once again gathered on an annual exercise, which I have to say from our end, and speaking on behalf of our constituents, has now become a mockery, a sham. It is now, sir, I think what the classical scholars would call a brutum fulmen, a thing writ in water. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I can really think of no more apt a description than a thing writ in water, because by definition, a thing written in water leaves no evidence of what was there. And when we examine the budgetary proposals delivered by the Minister of Finance yesterday, we cannot honestly say that they serve any purpose beyond, sir, satisfying the Minister of Finance's desire to summon us to Parliament to hear him speak. Mr. Speaker, as a child, I was an avid reader, and I have a fond recollection of reading a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen, and it had to do, Mr. Speaker, with a boy who was carrying cheeses to market. And for those of you who would know anything about Europe, you would know that cheeses were round. And a cheese fell off the cart and rolled to the bottom of a hill. And the boy sat and cried and wondered what he would do to recover this cheese. So he decided, sir, to roll another cheese down the hill behind it in the vain hope that the second cheese would bring back the first. Of course, no cheeses came back. And after a few more minutes, sir, he decided to roll yet another cheese down the hill. At the end of the exercise, sir, that boy had lost all of the cheese that he was to carry to market. He'd lost his capacity to earn, and he had engaged in nothing more than a futile endeavor. When we consider, Mr. Speaker, the annual efforts of this administration, we are reminded, Mr. Speaker, of an exercise in rolling yet another set of cheese down the proverbial hill in the hope, sir, of bringing back some prosperity and growth to the Barbadian economy. We've had it for 8 years. I think we've had this current Minister of Finance for 6 of those 8 years. And every year, sir, we come to this Parliament for his annual budgetary proposals. And when we reflect, Mr. Speaker, on what happened the year before and the year before that and the year before that, I would suggest that no member of this chamber would recollect what the previous year's proposals were, except they took up the book and read it. And I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that that is instructive. It is instructive because if we cannot immediately recollect a single one of last year's budgetary proposals, then it means, sir, that they have left no mark on the Barbadian society or the Barbadian economy, sir, a thing writ in water. I challenge any member on that side to tell us what some of those proposals were, or the proposals given in the year 2014 or 2013 or 2012. Mr. Speaker, a former leader of the opposition and a former Prime Minister of Barbados said on this side in 2008 that he served as Chairman of Cabinet for 14 years and as Prime Minister for 14 years, and that the buck stopped at him. He, standing on the floor of this Parliament, was man enough to say that all and any of the failings, and there weren't many, but whatever there were of a Barbados Labour Party administration between 1994 and 2008, he accepted responsibility for them. It is a position, sir, that I urge on the current Prime Minister, that he be brave enough to stand in this chamber and announce that the buck stops at him, and that he readily, sir, accepts responsibility for year after year after year after year of failings of his administration. But the other members of cabinet, Mr. Speaker, are not to get away because we operate on the basis of a system of collective responsibility. And we all know what that means, or we should know what it means. Because on that government side, there are numerous instances over the last few years where one minister said, I didn't know anything about it. The Prime Minister said, I haven't seen the document. It hasn't come to my desk. I didn't do this and I didn't do that. They've been very eager, Mr. Speaker, over the last 8 years to find ways of casting the blame on somebody else. Well, now, Mr. Speaker, 8 years into government, most way through their second term, the blame of the Barbados Labour Party now rings hollow and empty. So the Prime Minister and his cabinet are forced, perhaps for the first time, to acknowledge that the failings in today's society are theirs. The blame cannot be put on the Barbados Labour Party anymore. But despite the fact, Mr. Speaker, that we've come here today to respond, I suppose, to an empty set of budgetary proposals, I am not surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the member of the Democratic Labour Party who just spoke, in his opening comments, started to heap praise on the Minister of Finance. He said, I want to congratulate the Minister of Finance for this, and I want to congratulate the Minister of Finance for that. It is remarkable, sir, that we, in our 50th year of independence, in a mature parliament, have now reached the stage where we are now heaping what I guess the church people call all glory, laud, and honor on what, Mr. Speaker, are nothing more than a set of ordinary, at best, proposals which will leave no mark on the Barbadian society. In fact, Mr. Speaker, ordinary might be too generous a word, sir. We could perhaps call them lackluster. Mr. Speaker, we have a booklet which, in summary, sets out 17 proposals of this administration. Mr. Speaker, these proposals lack any substance. They lack meaning, sir. But most worrisome, they lack promise. There are Barbadians who had hoped and prayed that upon listening to the Minister of Finance yesterday evening, they would have been thrown a lifeline somehow. Something to give them a hope for a brighter future for themselves or for the next generation, if not for themselves. But the Minister of Finance, in his fanfare and his corsage, having summoned us to Parliament, have given us a mishmash of proposals that are more reminiscent, Mr. Speaker, of projects undertaken by service clubs like the Kiwanis or Lions or Rotary. It is remarkable, Mr. Speaker, that in the year 2016, we could be asked to come to Parliament and give wholehearted support and praise for our cleanup and debushing program. When it was in the Duke of Edinburgh Ward scheme, sir, at the age of 18 years at Combermere School, the Duke of Edinburgh Ward scheme as a service project, had cleanup and debushing programs.
You were the girl guys.
The girl guys, but you know, Mr. Speaker, but I don't know how the member who just spoke would know, because by agreement, sir, we would attend meetings on alternate Wednesdays. But he was so anxious to come, he didn't want to come every other Wednesday. He insisted on coming on all the Wednesdays, sir. But whether it's the Girl Guides or the Boy Scouts or service clubs, sir, in today's Parliament, are we honestly telling this country, that what is nothing more than a debushing service program merits merit, sir, finding its way into the 2016 budgetary proposal, sir. The minister said that this was going to be a budget for growth and sustainability and all of those high-sounding words which were meant to assure Barbadians that our financial affairs and our livelihoods will be better very soon. But, sir, something has now warped the psyche of this government, so much so that the ordinary and the mediocre appeals to them and find their way into a national program for a country like Barbados. I'm ashamed, sir. I'm ashamed. I took the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to look through most of the budgetary proposals that were presented by the Barbados Labour Party between 1994 and 2007, sir. There is no equivalent. There is no equivalent of such a measure. And perhaps, sir, it would be a good point, it would be a good place to make the point that the budgetary proposals, I found it very easy to categorize them into three, to put them into three slots, sir. The first slot is the slot of the trifling. And I don't need to define trifling for members of this chamber. The first slot is the trifling one, sir, and I have to put the debushing program into the trifling. And then the next slot, Mr. Speaker, is the slot of the warmed over. Because in this budgetary proposal, there are things that were established by the Barbados Labour Party back in the 90s that have somehow found their way into the 2016 budget, and the minister wants to tell us have emerged from his imagination. And then, sir, they're the downright harmful. And if we classify them in that way, sir, I think that covers all the budget. There's absolutely nothing of these 17 proposals that is either not trifling, nor warmed over, nor downright harmful. But, Mr. Speaker, let me come back to the $5 million program. Now, apart from the fact that it doesn't merit being in this high statement of political purpose, I would like to remind the members on that side that Barbados, under the Barbados Labour Party, had a debushing program. It was an annual program, and it had to be annual. It had to be annual, sir. It wasn't a crash program because it was repeated for every year that we were in government. We also had, Mr. Speaker, a program called Beautify Barbados. Beautify Barbados employed 250 Barbadians, Mr. Speaker. But you know what? In his infinite wisdom, the Minister of Finance, together with the members on that side, decided that they would shut down Beautify Barbados, send home 250 individuals, sent them home unceremoniously, sent them home without even accrued vacation pay. Up to this day, Mr. Speaker, they've not got it. But the trade-off that the minister gives us after delivering such a dolorous blow on 250 Barbadians is that we're going to have a $5 million debushing program, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is not a sustainable program. It is lasting 5 months from the 1st of January 2016. 1st of September 2016, and will terminate in January of 2017. I don't know. I hear there's an election coming, so maybe they want. No, the minister ain't having a face. The minister said this is the program. This is it. So there's no long-term plan. But we are asked, and the minister who just spoke congratulated the Minister of Finance. So that is what we've come to. Mr. Speaker, but how did it get this way? There are roads in my constituency that individuals can barely walk along Farless Drive because the Ministry of Public Works has virtually stopped doing any debushing at all in rural Barbados. I believe the member for St. Thomas would agree to this. Yep. They've stopped doing virtually any debushing. They've fired the people, sir. We have we have mountains of garbage piled up at every street corner. And you know, there's a member, I think, who had brought some groceries in here. This is a old wife tale, I suppose, but he wanted to make them documents to the house.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that, sir. Yes? Ginger porn.
Yeah.
But Mr. Speaker, you just need to get to the outskirts of Bridgetown, and you will see mountains of garbage that must not have been collected for weeks and weeks. Now, Mr. Speaker, now, why should I come and celebrate a debushing program? Is the minister and his colleagues going to go there in hats with cutlasses and try to clean up Barbados? That is what they should do, sir, as an act of penance. Because having set the house on fire, they want to say, but here's $5 million to help to out it. Mr. Speaker, you know, I am amused when I hear the Minister of Finance talk about health. You know, I am so worried about the potential health ramifications, Mr. Speaker, of this unsightly accumulation of household garbage. It is no wonder, sir, the rat population, the rodent population in Barbados has exploded beyond measure. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask myself, what really is the priority of the government? Now, sir, among the warmed over is a proposal, sir, to appoint public servants. Now, again, I don't know how that get to be a manifesto promise. Sorry, how did that get to be a budgetary proposal, sir? Why is it a budgetary proposal for the Democratic Labour Party that they should do what they ought to do? How is it that the carrying out of the day-to-day duties of the Ministry of the Public Service makes its way into a budgetary proposal? Public officers who are acting in posts should be appointed. And you know what is worse, sir? That the former Prime Minister, now deceased David Thompson, in October of 2007, speaking at a meeting of Democratic Labour Party members in Toronto, promised that he would do just that. I believe that he somehow found out that we had legislation that was far advanced in drafting, because by then it was very, very far advanced, which intended to make sure that public servants who were acting for a long period of time were going to be appointed. Now, Mr. Speaker, the former Prime Minister promised it. We passed the legislation which mandated it. In fact, the act said that a certain category of temporary employee a person who was acting for 3 years as at the date of the act, was entitled to be appointed. And Section 1311 of that act also went on to say that no post in the public service could be left vacant for more than a year except they received the fiat of the Governor General. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of the Public Service, in terms of its ordinary day-to-day duties, is to see to it that the workers of Barbados are treated fairly in accordance with law, and that their dreams and aspirations in terms of their employment and job security and job opportunities are realized. That is what the head of civil service goes to work every day to see to. That is what you have a permanent secretary in the Ministry of the Civil Service. That is what you have a Ministry of the Civil Service to do. So to say that you're going to appoint temporary officers, sir, is like putting in the budgetary proposal that a sanitation authority can collect garbage. It means nothing, because you have a whole ministry that is established to do it. So what next, sir? In next year's budget, are we going to see a proposal which says that nurses shall give injections? How ridiculous are you going to get, sir? So that is warmed over, and it is also quite trifling. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? There's no doubt in our mind that an election is around the corner. Well, you know, I believe that the members of the public have heard the lament, because it sounded like a lament to me, I say elections are around the corner, and I hear a loud chorus coming from the government benches saying, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord." You know, sir, I know where you can find people who, when I said so, raised up their voices with cheers. Cheers, sir. Jubilation, sir. Because the only people who are lamenting the coming soon of an election is the Democratic Labour Party, you know. I want to remind the members of the Democratic Labour Party that Barbadians, Mr. Speaker, Barbadians mark hard. Barbadians mark very hard. In 2008, we had brought unemployment down to 6%. The economy was booming. You know, to use the words of a former prime minister, we were firing on all cylinders. But Barbadians mark hard, sir. And when we could succeed in bringing unemployment down to first world levels and could still lose a government, if I were the members of the Democratic Labour Party, I would be afraid to call the elections. I'd be afraid to call the elections, sir. But you know what? The elections are coming. So it suits the Democratic Labour Party to trot out this old promise that was made by David Thompson. I'm expecting that they're going to resurrect the promise to give teachers duty-free cars and interest-free housing loans. That's going to come next, I'm sure. So as to encourage people to vote for them. But Mr. Speaker, Barbadians are not foolish. And I don't think that any amount of pretty words and grandstanding by members of the Democratic Labour Party in here tonight or in any other night will cause Barbadians to change their mind from the sure and certain course of getting this particular administration out of power, sir. Mr. Speaker, a Minister of Finance comes to Parliament, sir, and says to the people of Barbados that he is going to impose another tax. And this is now a national social responsibility levy. I would like to suggest to the Minister of Finance that the pay cut that they took, I'd like to suggest to them, sir, that they should change their minds about taking it back and consider it, sir, a government national responsibility levy. You see, sir, this government wants to do a lot of things. They want to undo a lot of things. They want to do a lot of misguided things, sir, like push Cahill down our throat, and now Delfo, and the Grotto, and all those kinds of projects, sir. And a minister of tourism, Mr. Speaker, could actually, you know, there's so many things to say. A minister of tourism, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to digress, but now that I'm on it, let me just mention it quickly. A minister of tourism says, Mr. Speaker, that he has signed an agreement with the parties who are going to be constructing the Hyatt. Now, you know, I don't think, it is unfortunate that the Minister of Tourism could fall into the exact same trap of the Attorney General. The Attorney General said that the particular individual should be granted bail, and 2 days later, the individual was granted bail.
I also say you should be prison.
No, sir. Well, sir, I don't drive about anybody's cars and hit them and then tell the police don't report it. I don't go to police stations to recover bullets, sir, and then threaten the police officer now dead with disciplinary procedures. So I'm not worried about that, sir. Mr. Speaker, I will say this. The Minister of Tourism must reflect on the kind of message that he is sending the Town Planning Department when he signs an agreement with a private company to build a hotel. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Tourism is not responsible for town planning, that is true. But the fact is, when he signs an agreement which appears to give the fiat of the executive for the construction of this 15-story hotel, what is the chief town planner and his officers going to do? Is he going to say, no, I'm not going to give permission to build it? No, Mr. Speaker, but let's talk about the tax. Because at the heart of it all, I want to remind the member for St. Michael Northwest and the Minister of Finance that while he can sit in his office and craft what he considers to be government policy, that there are people out there, sir, who have to suffer and live under it. I don't think the Minister of Finance is going to suffer under the additional 2% tax burden that he is imposing on citizens, and to toss out a little $2 million as a palliative to Barbadians to say, well, the most vulnerable could get a little welfare assistance. Mr. Speaker, unemployment is high. Businesses are shutting down. There is a public sector wage freeze and a de facto private sector wage freeze because private sector businesses are not making any money, so they can't increase salaries. But yet still the minister feels very comfortable in saying that he's going to impose a cess of 2%. You know, so I checked last year's budget. In last year's budget delivered in June of 2015, the minister came here and said, well, we are going to have this health trust. And we're going to fund it with $20 million that will come from the catastrophe fund. And the cess on oil will continue for another year. And all of this money is going to go to the QEH. But the minister has not come to this parliament to tell us today, before he puts another cess on the people, what was the result of that particular initiative that was meant to unburden and unshackle the hospital. Was it successful? How much money did the cess raise? What has been the impact on the QEH? I know that as I speak, sir, people have to carry their own toilet paper to the QEH. They have to carry their own bandages to the QEH. So what was the point of that cess? But yet still, sir, without giving a report of what happened as a result of the last budgetary proposal, he comes in here today and says that there's a $2 million cess. And because there's a hope that sanitation, a 2% cess. Because there's a hope that sanitation will get some trucks and finally be able to collect garbage, Mr. Speaker, Barbadians are supposed to get excited about it. Mr. Speaker, I have constituents who, sir, have endured more hardship in the last 8 years as Barbadians than at any other time of their life. Their garbage is not collected. Their roads, sir, have fallen apart. You can hardly drive along a road in not just St. Joseph, but in rural Barbados without damaging a vehicle, sir. Mr. Speaker, I have a constituent who lives in a place Mr. Speaker, that we call Bonwell. Now, you know, for the scholars, I guess Bonwell would connote something beautiful, sir. Something that is pleasing. This particular individual, sir, between January and February, the month of January, February, he was only able to get 1 cubic meter of water from the Water Authority. 1 cubic meter, sir. Now, Mr. Speaker, a cubic meter is probably less water than the average household will use in a day, but for the entire month, he was only able to get 1 cubic meter from the authority. February, March, sir, his billing again reflected 1 cubic meter. March, April, 0 cubic meters. April, May, 0 cubic meters. May, June, 0 cubic meters. June, July, 0 cubic meters. There's another individual, sir, in Bonwell who has not had running water in his taps since Christmas Eve of 2015. Since Christmas Eve, Mr. Speaker, of 2015. And my constituents are hurting. They're hurting, sir. But yet still the minister wants to tell us, the Minister of Finance wants to tell us about growth. What growth can I expect in St. Joseph or in rural Barbados when businesses have to close because they cannot get water, sir? Small people who sell food can't get water. Hotels that have to close because they can't get water for their guests. Grantley Adams School closes on a regular basis because of no water. St. Joseph Primary, St. Bernard's, St. Elizabeth. But yet still, Mr. Speaker, my constituents are no burden. But you know what? Notwithstanding that you're not getting the water, sir, every month the bill gives you got to pay $37 for the meter. Now, you know, I have told my constituents, is that water authority to come and take off the meter? Because if it isn't registering anything, it isn't serving any purpose. And if it serves no purpose, I am just paying for it like a useless appendage. So don't just relieve me of water, relieve me of your meter. But Mr. Speaker, yes, they do need a rebate. But what we need is more than a rebate, Mr. Speaker, on water bills. The people of my constituent of Barbados need a rebate from this administration. That's the best kind of rebate that the people of Barbados can have, sir. In terms of the warmed over, I really don't have much time, but I will just say this. The minister has said that they're introducing a program to put $50,000 in reimbursable funding in the hands of small businesses so that they can meet international standards. This is warmed up, sir. We've been there, done that. When the Barbados Labour Party established and ran the Technical Assistance Fund, there was no cap on the amount of money you could get. But now it is being touted as a wonderful endeavor, but there's a cap. Mr. Speaker, when we set up those funds, businesses like Hanselinis, businesses like Pine Hill Dairy, and those are the big ones, Harris Paints, but the smaller ones as well, the people who sell seasonings, they were all able to benefit funding so they could become HACCP and ISO compliant. This is nothing new. It's all there, and the funding is still there. So the minister has come in, sir, with his mishmash, his trifling, his ineffective, things that will make no difference in the Barbadians' public. Mr. Speaker, the only good thing is that just like his previous budgets, in 6 months' time, nobody will remember the promises made now, simply because they will either not have been carried through, or if they have been followed through on, they will have left absolutely no footprint on the lives of Barbadians, Mr. Speaker. There's nothing to praise in this budget, and the members on the government side who feel obliged should excuse themselves, because it will ring hollow. None of the congratulations will be sincere. What they should offer instead, Mr. Speaker, will be apologies to the people of Barbados. I am obliged.